I am not proud of it, and yet reality is I was a complaining spouse and it almost destroyed our marriage. In today's episode, I'm going to share with you some powerful neuroscience research done from Stanford and explain to you how I stopped complaining and how you can as well. I complained about everything. I complained that my spouse wasn't compassionate enough. He wasn't engaging in deep conversations. He wasn't taking me on dates. He wasn't saving enough money. He was watching too much TV. On and on and on, the complaining went. And it was exhausting for both of us. The powerful thing is I couldn't see it was complaining. I didn't even know I was complaining. I was just literally thinking I was having conversations about what I didn't like, but I couldn't see that it was a complaint. There was a pattern. I would come to him and I would complain, you don't take me on dates. Well, that would inspire a complaint from him where he would be like, he would say, I just took you on a date 2 months ago. I would then complain that a date 2 months ago isn't enough. He would then complain back. It doesn't matter what I do. I can't make you happy. And then I would complain, you always seem to make me the problem. This would go on and on. Sometimes for hours, we would complain back and forth with each other. And this was our way of communicating until it finally we would get so frustrated with each other. I would usually storm out of the room and he would shut down. And this was the complaining conversations we would have that we called, conversations. But they were truly just a series of one complaint after a next. And the reality is it was very interesting because it would create this intense, grungy feeling inside of my body. And somehow I began to accept that as normal. I didn't realize that grungy feeling inside of my body was my body communicating to me. It was trying to tell me that I was doing some great damage inside of my brain, which I had no idea, and I'm about to share with you what that was about. But my body knew that I was damaging my brain and damaging my marriage. And that grungy feeling was my body trying to get my attention to help me choose something new. But rather than choose something new, I just thought it was normal. And I walked around most days in this grungy feeling. As I did some research, I began to find this study that was done out of Stanford as to what actually happens in the human brain when we complain. And it is shocking. So there is this part of our brain called the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is where problem solving and critical thinking occurs. And what happens in the brain is when the study showed that when you are complaining, and all it takes is 30 minutes of complaining. As you begin to complain for 30 minutes or more, the hippocampus of the brain literally shrinks. Now, the hippocampus of the brain is what's destroyed in Alzheimer's. So if you think about Alzheimer's, when you don't have the ability to even think, problem solve, remember, that's the part of your brain that I and you are destroying when we complain. We are moving ourselves closer to Alzheimer's because we're telling our brain we don't want to problem solve. So the brain says, okay, I'll shrink that part so it's not as painful for you when in order to bypass it. So it's like this. The brain is set up. We're set up to have problem, solution, action, right? Problem, solve, grow. When we complain, we tell our brain that's not the pathway we're looking for. We're looking for the pathway where we can have a problem, complain, and be negative about life. So the brain says, okay, if you don't want to use this piece of your brain that is for problem solving, we're just going to shrink it down and build a bridge over it so that you can just bypass that part of the brain. But what the research showed is that as we do that, as it shrinks, we actually become addicted to negativity and we attract drama to our life. So we have more and more to complain about. My word, this describes my marriage perfectly. The more I complained, the more despairing our marriage got. The less creative we could be to figure out how to solve problems together. The more negative and critical and judgmental we became about each other. There was problem after problem. There was more and more drama in our marriage. Now I understand I was literally destroying the part of my brain that could create creative thinking and problem solving. Thankfully, we began to shift from complaining to making requests. And there are 6 steps that we followed to do that I'm going to walk you through now. The first step number 1, is I needed to recognize I was complaining. I literally didn't think I was complaining. I would say something like, you don't ever help with the dishes. Okay, well, how would I know that was a complaint? There are 4 very important things that tell me it's a complaint. First, all I'm doing is saying what I don't like. Second, it's a statement, not a question. A request is a question. If it's not a question, it's a complaint. The third thing that tells us it's a complaint is there's no clarity about what I do want. I'm only talking about what I don't want or what I don't like. And the fourth thing that establishes that it's a complaint is there's no new steps that come out of the conversation. So if you want to stop complaining, you first got to recognize you are complaining. Once you recognize you have a complaint, something is happening that you don't like or you don't want. The second step is to notice what you do want. Okay? So I take my husband's not helping in the house to what is it that I want? I want my husband to help in the house. Well, we need to move to this third step, which is to get specific, because men and women think very differently, right? So if I want him to help in the house, does that mean I want him to wash my delicates, or I want him to organize the pantry, or I just want him to help clean up the kitchen after dinner? Those are very different things. And if I'm going to move a complaint to a request, I must get specific so I can actually make a clear request, which is step number 4. So I may go to my husband and I may say, look, I'm recognizing that I'm a little overwhelmed with all the work of the house as I, come home from a full day of work. Would you be willing to help me with dinner? I'm happy to make the dinner. Would you clean up from the dishes afterwards? Now, the 5th step is I need to come into an agreement. Often I would make requests, but they wouldn't go anywhere because, I was making them while the kids are screaming and running through the house or he's scrolling on his phone. So the 5th step is we need to come into an agreement. Is it something he's in agreement to do? And if he is in agreement to do, we move to step 6, where we carry out the new agreement. We say, okay, tomorrow night when I'm making dinner, you've got dishes, right? Okay, great. We're set. So rather than complaining, we've entered into a request, which is moved into an agreement, and we have new action coming out. We use the problem-solving critical thinking part of our brain, and we moved something that wasn't working to something that can work. And it is powerful what happens. This is the approach my husband and I have been in choosing in our marriage over the last 10 years. And it's shocking how much better we're getting at problem solving. We're actually growing that hippocampus part of our brain, and we are developing partnership and commitment and trust because I stopped complaining and started making requests. One of the keys, one of the phrases that was helpful for us is, because often I still didn't recognize, even now I sometimes don't recognize I'm complaining. So if one of us is complaining, we'll say, I hear your complaint. What is your request? Now, in the beginning, that would offend me because I'm like, I'm not complaining. The truth is I was, and now I'm grateful when my husband helps point it out because I know he cares about me and he cares about our marriage. He doesn't want me shrinking the hippocampus of my brain, and I don't want him shrinking it either. So the next time you find yourself complaining or your spouse notifies you that you're complaining, would you remember the power of a clear request and take these 6 steps so you can move into partnership and connection in your marriage? Get rid of that grungy feeling and instead feel the joy of connection and working together to bring about what it is that you long for. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week.